This isn't going to be a structured message today with some magnificent point. I just want to share with you a little of my heart. I've always known that God has a deep calling on my life. I knew it ever since I was saved at 12 years old. And because of that, I carried it with so much pride. We all know the story of the Tower of Babel that was built, and it was so that the people could become famous out of pride and ambition and intentions of the people glorifying themselves and conserving themselves. And then God brought confusion to decommission the objective. I've attempted to build a platform since 2010 to speak my truth, but I didn't know what my truth was. I was just speaking to hear my own voice. And each time I gained momentum on my high horse, God brought confusion and knocked me right back down. The first time was in 2010, then in 2013, and again in 2016, and most recently in 2024. I've chatted with a friend about how maybe God designed me to have a mental illness that works as a double-edged sword. God knew the plans he had for me before I was even born. Just like in the book of Daniel, King Nebuchadnezzar became so prideful that he built a golden statue and commanded everyone to worship it. I've often tried to show off my talents to gain praise for my good works. And just like God made Nebuchadnezzar humbled by having a dream of a tree being cut down, and when Daniel interpreted it, he gave him warning and was like, you need to not continue in your pride or else God will humble you. And Nebuchadnezzar, he ignores the warning and continues with his pride. And as a result, he is struck with a mental illness that makes him live like a wild animal for 7 years. I've also struggled with the mental illness, and each time it humbles me. But each time I always just start over from ground zero. I've never faced it and taken accountability for what led me there until this most recent episode. I shine so bright, then spontaneously combust, only to catch fire again. I've had a psychotic break with reality 4 different times in my lifetime. Each one consisted of the same idea of owning a business called Iris Illumination, a ministry with a ministry under it called Fountain of Love. The last episode I experienced was both tragic and beautiful at the same time. It was tragic for the way that it affected all the people around me because it really did impact their lives. And it was actually beautiful because God knocked me so hard off my high horse that I literally came face to face with death and had to realize that it was only by God's grace and mercy that carried me to where I am today. Deuteronomy 32:10 says, "In a desert land he found her, in a barren and howling waste. He shielded her and cared for her. He guarded her as the apple of his eye." I've been pretty prideful my entire life and thought I knew everything about everything. And I've always thought that I was special, unique, and set apart. But this last episode brought me to my knees. On July 13th, I acknowledged that I can't do any of this without having Jesus in my life as the centerpiece of my life. I used to think God would show me my path like a spotlight, and I just had to find it. I just had to find that spotlight in the sky and it would tell me where to go. Or like a Las Vegas neon sign that I could easily see. But it's not like that. God is now showing me he will only guide me step by step with a lamp that only reveals so much at a time. And I have to blindly trust where he is leading me. This can be super scary and super intimidating because I've lived a broken-hearted life, not really being able to trust anyone but myself because I've been hurt so many times. But the brokenness God gave me to cry out and and tell me that He has a purpose and a plan for my life. God gave me that brokenness. And yes, He gave me that brokenness so that I would fall to my knees and become so humble, knowing that only Him could carry me through this life. On July 9th, I was prophesied over, and one message that really stood out to me was a vision that I was wearing my favorite bulky winter clothing in so many layers during the summertime. And when I first heard that, I thought, oh my gosh, how does this person know that I'm carrying so many burdens of hurt? Now listening to it again several months later, I can understand that I was wearing my favorite things to show them off to people at the wrong time. I wore my pride of talents as a huge medals of honor that only weighed me down so heavily. It wasn't until I started becoming a student of God and seeking Him daily that I am just beginning to remove those layers of pride and understand that I don't work for God and I am not accomplishing things to give God glory. Rather, I'm just allowing myself to be an open vessel that He works through to allow His glory to shine so brightly that others can begin to understand His goodness. Instead of lighting a match and creating an explosion each time, God is calling me to ignite a bonfire that burns through the coldest days and keeps others warm. By adding logs and feeding the fire daily, this fire is not going to go out. It won't spontaneously combust, but rather it will light a fire in my daughter's life. I'll teach her how to feed and maintain and keep that fire going for her generation to come. And I believe that is how revival is going to start, by teaching others what I have learned so openly and so vulnerably, and sacrificing my dignity so that others may also learn to ignite their own fire to warm a harsh and cruel world during its coldest days. It's really only through God that I can be here today sharing any of this with you. And I'm hoping that He is being glorified through this message as you listen to it.